Julia Telford, welcome here today for our showcase series in the WIRE program. This series is really about showcasing our rural women entrepreneurs, or women that really actually quite exceptional in living their entrepreneurial behavior, and you certainly are one of those women. I'm very aware of the fact that you've been working in the rural space for a very long time, and you've been working with rural businesses, regional businesses, very often remote businesses, and that's why we've asked you to just have a bit of a chat today to share some of your advice and your learnings and so forth. So the first aspect that I want to ask you about is just tell me a little bit about yourself before we get to the more kind of entrepreneurial business aspects.
Sure thing. Thanks, Rita, and thanks. I feel very honoured to be part of this project. So thanks for the invitation. I guess my background, I grew up north of Roma in Western Queensland on my family's cattle and sheep, and now cattle and goat property, and mum and dad still live there. So for me, I have always lived and worked across regional Queensland, and I really enjoy that. I'm based in Goondiwindi now, and I've called Goondiwindi home for the last 10 years. Yeah. I think it's one of those communities I came for a 3-month contract, and a decade later I'm still here. So it's certainly got its claws in me and kept me here. I have a background in environmental management, so for the majority of my working career to date, I've worked in the agricultural industry from a natural resource management point of view, so working with land care groups and catchment groups across southwest Queensland. And I guess really the roles that I've had have been around that extension and support roles, so helping groups of people identify what it is that they want to be able to do, and then help them work out what are the steps that we need to do for that to be realised. So, and some of that's come with me into my new world in small business. So I guess that's a little bit about how I've ended up where I am.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I can see the bandwidth is going down a little bit, but then it's coming up again, and that's the challenges of rural enterprises that we can see on show today. But that I'm sure we'll be making this whole interview without any dropouts. You want to tell me a little bit more about your business?
Absolutely. So I started my consulting business, Engage and Create Consulting, in December 2012. So we turned 4 at Christmas time, basically. And I guess, so I guess for me, that business is around being able to work with small business and community organisations in the business improvement space. So we really work across regional Australia, helping business around strategy, around resourcing once they've got their idea or they've got their business plan, helping them resource that, whether it's grant writing or helping access sponsorship dollars. And then the other part that's really a passion for me is helping with their people. So how do we work together as teams? How do we really encourage the best out of each other? Generally, when we're living and working in communities where there's just not a lot of us, we're not talking about a high population, so we actually need to be able to function really well together in the work environment. So that's my consulting business. And then I just wanted to mention, because we might end up talking about it a little bit as we go, but another business that I'm involved with my partner Tony and another couple is the Goondiwindi Business Hub. So it was an old accounting building that we purchased at the end of 2013 and renovated, and we rent that. So my business rents an office space that you can kind of see one corner of behind me.
Yeah, very good view in the background, I can see.
Yeah. And there's got to be some perks of being the landlord. I get a window office. And there's 7 other small businesses that also rent offices here as well. So that's a more recent business that we've been involved with.
Okay, so you're based in Goondiwindi, but you obviously work the entire Queensland, or do you work the entire Australia? Because constantly, when I try and catch up with you sometimes on the phone, it's like, then you're up north and then you're down south. And so, tell me a little bit about the reach that you have.
Sure. So I guess, Rita, with Engage and Create, I really talk about it in terms of wanting to support the viability and vibrancy of regional Australia.
Okay.
So there are people doing fantastic things in capital cities and in some of the larger centres. But I guess because of my background, because of my interest, because of my skill set, I end up working with industry groups and networks that are predominantly across regional Australia. Okay. So that sees me working with partners in grain in South Australia, or with the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association to deliver workshops for women in remote Northern Territory, or the Stanthorpe Chamber of Commerce. So for me, I guess my interest and where I think I can be useful is broadly in regional Australia. And bandwidth can be an issue sometimes, as we'll come through this, but I guess it's not always face-to-face. But predominantly that's the area that I work, and then I have some clients that are locally based here in Goondiwindi.
Okay, fantastic. Look, I'm very interested to get to know you a little bit more as an entrepreneurial woman, do you see yourself as an entrepreneur, or how would you describe yourself? Because I know the term entrepreneurship is thrown around everywhere, but very often I do talk to women. They say, I don't actually see myself as an entrepreneur, and then I'm thinking, you're such an entrepreneur and you do all these wonderful, fantastic things, but that may not be how you see yourself. Tell me about how do you see yourself within this whole entrepreneurial context? Because there's so many words being thrown around at the moment in this particular space.
Yeah, there are, and I think everybody has a slightly different definition. So they might be happy to wear that label, but how they define it might be different to somebody else.
Sure.
So I think some of this for me is a little bit as Australians, then as regional Australians, then as women, we're not often good at picking things up and running with it in terms of putting ourselves out there. Yeah, we don't often, the tall poppy syndrome and everybody's just getting on and doing what they do. So there's certainly a piece of that can be a bit daunting when people, are using terms like entrepreneur or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I guess the reality is, I spend a lot of my time working with small businesses and encouraging them to own the space that they work in. And so by default, I need to take a bit of my own advice sometimes. So I guess I have grown into being comfortable being spoken about and seeing myself in this entrepreneur space.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, the way that I define it is, really being able to look at how we can, create a difference creatively, basically. So what are some of the challenges, and how can we start to look at some solutions that might be different or more creative than we've tried in the past? And if that's the definition of entrepreneur, I'm really happy to pick that up and see myself in that light, because I think by default that's what I do.
Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite part about being an entrepreneurial woman?
So for me, I think it's about being part of greater good, being part of helping create positive impact. So that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily doing it. I might be supporting others to do it. I might be enabling the opportunity through helping resource, helping find funding. But for me, it's about being in service of the greater good and being able to be really clear around wanting to invest my time and energy in building a really viable and vibrant regional community.
Okay. What you just said to me actually says a lot to me about your mindset. So, tell me a little bit about your own mindset, because there must be a lot of challenges, especially in the rural space that you work in. And, what kind of mindset do you have, and what is it about your mindset that actually help you, go through particular and work through particular challenges?
Yeah. So I guess I have grown up I've grown up in a setting where I've got a younger sister and brother, and I've grown up in a family environment where both mum and dad, but particularly mum, said girls can do anything, whatever you want to do, you can do it. You know, study, don't study, whatever job you want, you can do, and you'll do really well at it.
Yeah.
And so to have that support and to have that almost expectation from an early age that whatever we do, we can succeed at if we want it hard enough and we work hard enough, I think has been really important for me. So sometimes some things happen and I've got the opportunity to reflect and realise that that's just been part of my family upbringing, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
So I think the thing for me in terms of regional areas is, for a lot of us, we grew up in small communities where volunteering was something we did. You know, I talk about this a lot. You know, we grew up where everybody helped out at the local tennis day or the cricket day or the local dance or whatever it was. Once you were old enough to walk around and be helpful, you got given a job and you needed to do it. And so that sense of community is really strong. And I see in some smaller communities, they really miss that. You know, some of that has disappeared over time and they really miss that. And so that mindset around contributing and being part of something bigger than just myself, I really am very grateful that I got that a lot from my own family and from my own community growing up.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of I think that's a really underpinning thing for me, that, you know, the more I read and listen to podcasts and understand, you know, some of the theory around this, you know, that abundance mentality term gets used. And when I read that sat really well with me. I could understand that, kind of put a term for me around some of the stuff that I understood and could see happening in my life. And I think the other thing is that as I have gotten older reader, being able to articulate and be really clear around my values and purpose has been the other thing that's really helped my mindset. So often we kind of might have some of that subconsciously, or we do it but we don't have a word associated to that particular action or that interest. But I think that's the other piece for me, is I have in more recent times been able to kind of articulate what's important to me, and then make sure that I can really put that front and center. And I think regionally, and particularly women, they do that really well. We do that really well. We just maybe don't articulate it. You know, family is important to us. Contribution is important to us. Sustainability is important to us. We just maybe don't think about it in those terms, but that everything that we're doing comes back to our values and you know, what's really core to us.
Absolutely. I love that same abundance that you use. It's so important in, you know, in looking at things and conceptualizing things and so forth. This brings me to, you know, when you started your business 4 years ago, you must have had some kind of vision for it. And tell me a little bit about maybe, you know, what kind of vision did you have for your business? And now 4 years on, maybe, has that changed? Or, you know, what do you see for yourself going forward? So there's probably two questions in one here.
Yeah, so I guess initially what I was quite clear of, I was working for an organisation, and, you know, I kind of, for lots of different reasons, got to the point where that was not going to be where I wanted to continue working. I was really clear that I wanted to stay living in Goondiwindi, that I thought I had a fairly broad set of skills and I knew a lot of people. And so by default, I had I'd given 3 months notice. So in that time, people had kind of heard that I was leaving my job, and, you know, they said, what are you doing next? And I said, what a good idea. Maybe I should have thought of that before I resigned. And as a result, my networks have been really generous to me in that time. And so people said, well, you know, I need somebody to be involved with this project, or have you got time to make a few phone calls? Or so in the first few months, there was very little strategy, I would have to admit. But I guess what I realised fairly quickly, and probably in the first 6 months, was I had always had a role where community was at the core of what I did. You know, I worked for not-for-profit organisations for 15 years, so community was always core. And what I fairly quickly realised was I could still do community work. It took me a little while to be comfortable telling people I was a consultant.
Yeah.
Baggage sometimes that comes with that terminology.
Yeah.
But what I realised fairly quickly was I could have a commercial business continuing to work with community that would be able to still have this positive impact and greater good than I realised. So once I realised that it was actually okay to be paid to do some of the work that I had been doing, then my confidence grew, and I guess starting to actually map out what this business could look like, that it actually could be a business and it wasn't me just being paid ad hoc until I worked out what I was going to do when I grew up kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was probably the first 12 months, was actually identifying, turns out work keeps coming, turns out people have people all over the country have got a different idea of where I could be useful. Yeah. And so that really helped me, Rita, to work out, okay, well, now that I know that I can do this, how do I want to do it? What does that actually look like? Yeah. Because the second part of your question about where do I want to go to, you know, I spent of the first 4 years of business, I spent the first year working from the front room of our house and really hated every minute of it. I was used to around people. And at 5 o'clock, I could hear Tony's ute come around the corner and I'd attack him at the back door, and he'd talk to people all day and I hadn't. And so he needed a bit of time and space before I started to download. Yeah. So that was not really going to work for me long term. And that was, I guess, how the hub eventuated. But the other challenge for me, and it's part of my personality, and it would be for others that will be involved with the WIRE program, I'm sure, is I needed to be able to get some clarity, because what I wasn't very good at was saying no. And so I ended up in a situation where I actually ended up in hospital with anxiety and with panic attacks. Yeah. And through a process of a few months realised that I had been telling myself some stories around business and around continuity of business that really weren't serving me as an individual very well, and I needed to get on top of that if I was actually going to have a sustainable business. And so part of that, Rita, has been getting clarity around what parts of regional communities do I want to be part of. Yeah. What are those themes? And they sit for me around, you know, the role of women in regional Australia, around regional economic development, and around supporting and encouraging cultural diversity in our communities. Yeah. So now that I know that they're my 3 really hot spots, I can say yes to work around that. And if there's other work that comes my way, it might be really great and it could be really exciting, but I know now I need to send that to somebody else. I need to say, look, that sounds like a fantastic project. Ring Liz Todd, she's your person. You know, talk to Fleur Anderson, talk to this other network, fantastic women, because I could do the work, but I shouldn't do the work. Yeah. You know, so that's the bit that I have had to get clear on, and I guess that's helped me take the business to the next stage from a work point of view, but also from my own sustainability point of view. That came at a really high price, I guess, for a while.
I mean, you touch on so many issues there. One of the aspects was the fact that, you know, there were some hurdles in your journey. So, you know, what kind of things, or, you know, what do you think, what are the factors that helped you along your way to actually, you know, to stay focused and to progress your journey? You know, what are some of those things that you think really helped you?
Yeah, so I think, Rita, for me, one of the things that has been front and centre has been the generosity of others.
Yes.
So generosity of others in terms of engaging me in projects, you know, recommending me to people, but generosity of people to both offer work and support some of the projects and work that I'm doing, I think has been really great.
Yeah.
And I think that only comes once we have the confidence and the ability to ask.
Yeah.
So ask for help, ask for work, you know, actually put it out there. But, you know, it turns out people aren't mind readers, and so they will be really, in my experience, people are genuinely want everyone to succeed, but they can't do that if they don't know that you need help. So I guess one of the hurdles for me was being able to actually say, I need a hand, and then know that people don't see that as a weakness, want to genuinely help, whether that's paid or unpaid, whatever it is. But I think one of the hurdles we have is actually being able to admit when we need something, whatever thing is.
Yeah.
So actually asking for it and telling people what you're doing and where you're heading is, for me, has been great in people getting on board and helping succeed. So, you know, with the business hub, you know, we were really open about it. People were telling us we shouldn't be telling people about what we're doing because they'll steal our idea and they'll start something else. And I mean, that just doesn't sit with me for starters. But also that was just definitely that there's no history of that actually happening. You know, we were open with people. We wanted their support. They talked to others. We had half of the rooms rented before the painters had finished, and I genuinely don't think that would have happened if we'd kept this secret to ourselves and launched and opened the doors one day and be wildly surprised that nobody cared because nobody knew about it. You know, so I think our hurdle of actually being brave enough to tell people what we're thinking about and what we're doing, it won't mean that they steal our idea. It actually means that they'll help us succeed. They want us to do well.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to look at it. So in those moments of self-doubt and adversity, how do you build yourself up?
I think, it's a tricky one, I reckon. So for me, it is about having a group. You know, you and I have talked about mentors and people in our network that we can go to for some of this, and I think that is really important. For me, my personality style is I need to talk it through. There'll be others that's, you know, they're more reflective and they want to be able to have time and space. So knowing how you need that is, I think, really important. But for me, it has been about being able to talk it through with people. So what is the issue that I'm having? Who can help me with that? Having the courage to ask for help and knowing that somebody will genuinely want me to succeed and will want to help me with that has helped me through self-doubt. Because I think if we're really honest with ourselves, we know the next step. It's we need somebody to help us take it, or we need somebody to actually tell us it's okay.
So you know, in reflecting back over your journey so far, do you think there is some kind of formula, you know, for women who want to progress their entrepreneurial journey, or, you know, what are some of the elements that you think is very important or key to think about when you start a new business?
So I can only talk on my experience from the couple of businesses I've been involved with. And I think some of this for me is maybe regional Australia. Maybe it is happening in the cities as well, and I just don't have enough connections there. But I really think for us to be able to be clear on the stories that we tell ourselves. Often I will be spending a whole lot of time and energy thinking about something and assuming it's going to be a disaster.
The
question that I need to ask myself is, what's the history of this happening? What history do I have to suggest that this is going to be the outcome? This terrible thing that I'm spending a whole lot of energy thinking about, that's never happened to me in the past. Why would this be the time that that's going to be the case? And And so for me, that's been one of those questions that I need to come back to at times. So, you know, panicking that I'm going to, all of a sudden there'll be no work and I'm not going to have money, and how am I going to continue to contribute to our debt and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
There's no history of me not getting work, so why would I invest my time and energy there?
Yeah.
If I feel that that's going to be the case, what has worked for me in the past is to contact a few people and say, hey, come the end of March, you know, I've got a bit of spare capacity if there's anything that I can be helping you out with, or, you know, what could we do? That has worked for me in the past, so why wouldn't I just follow that path again? Yeah. So being really clear about the stories that we tell ourselves. We might not have necessarily started a consulting business before, but we've got no history of not finishing something that we start. So why would this business be anything else? So if people are looking to start something, you know, if they've succeeded in a voluntary capacity in a community group, and that's worked really well, and they've got a team of people to work together really well to deliver on a great fundraising activity that's brought in tens of thousands of dollars to their community over a year.
Yeah.
That's how would that not happen if they were doing it in their own business or in their own way? You know, if they've got a history of success in some way, that's got to follow them through. So what were the bits that worked there? I think that for me is a really important piece, that we don't assume we're starting at ground zero all of the time and we've got no experience in this.
Yeah.
You might not have it in the technical aspect of whatever particular business you might be wanting to start, but you've absolutely got experience working with people, building a team, you know, getting people to work well together. If anybody's had a big family Christmas, we can all deal with different personalities. You know, we actually have got a fantastic skill set.
Yeah.
We just might not have done that exact job before. And so I think that becomes quite an inhibitor sometimes, as opposed to thinking about the range of activities we've actually done in the past and being able to build on that in this one particular area.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess the other thing for me that I thought about since our last conversation is, the people who know me, they know that I don't take myself very seriously, but I do take the work that I do seriously. And I think for me there's a really fine line around that, and particularly for women. You know, the number of people who talk to me about, oh, I've got a little business and I only make this money and that goes towards our family holiday. Yeah. I only contribute to the family holiday each year. Yeah. That's massive. You know, that's an actual business that is contributing to a really key part of a bigger picture.
Yes.
So we need to own that. You know, there's people that would love to have that particular ability to be able to contribute to something like that. So for me, I think it's around, how do we take our businesses seriously and eradicate words like just and only in our vocabulary when we're talking about how we're contributing. Yeah. And at the same time, I personally don't take myself too seriously, because that's you know, that's who I am. But I think the thing that I've learned is people will take my business seriously if I do, and if I don't take it seriously, then I can't expect anybody else to either.
Yeah, I love what you just said about, forget about those words, just. That is so important, you know, for us as women in every day, really. Leading into probably a bit more of the some of the strategies that you may have used to actually build your business. Yeah. Can you maybe share, you know, like, how have you promoted and marketed your business? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I have, you know, I've got a Facebook page and on Instagram and things like that. Yeah. I guess, again, we need to be really careful about what's a tool for us to market and what is it that we're actually marketing. So, you know, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and a website are ways for us to get our message out, but we need to be quite clear about what our message is. Yeah. And the other part for me that took me a little while to understand was, who do I actually want to be marketing to? Yeah. And so often if somebody says, you know, who is your ideal customer, or who do you want to be working with, the more specific I can get about that, the clearer and the quicker I can actually find those people in my community.
Yeah.
And so that would be a really, if people are starting out, the strategy that I would encourage people to do is to really get clarity about who they want to do work with. So if it is for me, women who are involved with a small business, or they're wanting to take it from a hobby to a business, where am I likely to find them? I'm actually probably likely to find them at school drop-off. I'm likely to find them involved with some community groups around children's activity. You know, they're generally likely to be young mums of young people.
Yeah.
So that means then, how do I find them? I might be just as likely to find them at the supermarket between 9 and 3, because that's when they do the groceries because the kids are at school.
Yeah.
Then I would be running an ad in the paper. So being really clear about who is it that I actually want to work with and who can I support, and then where am I going to find them.
Yeah.
Talking to people at the supermarket is as much a marketing strategy as, you know, ads in the paper or posts on Facebook. So
yeah.
So what that looks like for me is really important. And I guess the other thing for me, Rita, that I didn't value was the number of emails that I had of people.
Yeah.
So if I realised that I wanted to let people know that I was going to be doing a workshop in St. George, it wasn't just sending emails to people at St. George. It was actually also sending emails to people at Mitchell and at Roma and at Bolen and at Dirranbandi, because they would have people that they know at St. George. So for me, it was actually thinking about who else knows the people that I know. And I think that is an absolute advantage for us in regional areas.
Yes.
You know, 6 degrees of separation is about 3.5 on this side of the range. So having clarity around that, I think, is really important. So I generally don't do broad scale marketing very much.
Yeah.
I do in terms of that broader business awareness and people knowing what I'm up to.
Yeah.
But me, if I want to be targeting people, it is phone and email and going to the people who I actually know will benefit from whatever it is that I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you get funded, or did you self-fund your business? Because that's a particular issue for a lot of women. They have this idea, but, you know, they don't know what kind of options may be the best for them in terms of the financial side of things.
No, it's a really good point. So, I think I said early on, I've got a partner, Tony. So he works here in Goondiwindi as well. So when I finished work at the end of 2012, I had a lot of annual leave owing to me. But I'd also been in a situation where I'd had a company car for as long as I can remember. So I actually didn't own a car or a telephone or some things that you need to start a business, as it turns out. But what I did have was some annual leave that I got paid. So that allowed me to buy a second-hand car. I set up organised a phone account, and Rita, I probably then had about $10,000 in my bank account.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had Tony's salary, so in terms of our regular day-to-day bills and buying the groceries and that kind of thing, we did have that as a backstop, and so that was good. But in terms of any other funds, I really just had that annual leave to rely on.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to be able to get some projects happening early. I guess for new people in new businesses, some of the logistics around it's actually okay to have, ask for people to pay in 7 days. It's okay if you're doing a project, so people are getting into a consulting project or even in building or making things, to be able to have as part of the contract that you get paid some of that amount up front. So 30% of the contract amount on signing and the rest when you finish the work. So it took me a little while to work some of that out. So there were some months where it was really tight, and there, and in my business there's months when I have no income.
Yeah.
I'll have some months of where all of the projects end up getting paid. So being able to ask about how you want that money to come in is perfectly okay, and people will understand that, and it's a fairly normal thing. It's probably the same with the university, but working with government, having some money come up front is really good. You just need to be able to ask. So I got better at that as time went on, and that then obviously helped with some of the cash flow.
Sure.
But also, I guess, as time goes on, I don't have a lot of overheads. The beauty of small business is it doesn't necessarily cost us a lot.
Exactly.
Now I pay rent. My rent is $170 a week. Any of my travel costs are associated to projects. So realistically, I don't have a lot of overheads, which means, that makes it cheaper for people to pay me. Often I'll get contracts because it's cheaper for them to get me to do the work than it is to employ somebody for them to do the work. So that's something for people to think about, is you actually become a cheaper and a less risky option than people needing to employ someone and get them up to speed. But certainly strategies around the finances, I have a hugely technical spreadsheet with columns of projects and when I'm going to get paid. So I know January and February, and I've got a few years now of some of that information. So for me, I know that January and February, I very rarely have any income because projects haven't started yet. But I also know that, April, May and October, November, they're big income months for me because a lot of my projects wrap up in either December or June. So with a little bit of hindsight and a few years under my belt, I can kind of manage my financial year based on when I know I'm not getting any salary and when I know I'm going to have bigger months. So it is some of that logistical stuff that you need to be able to manage. But I'm certainly asking people for part payment up front or having that as part of your contract. That certainly helped me being able to manage that a little bit.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on distinguishing yourself from your competitors. I mean, it's such it's a tough world out there in terms of, running a small business and so forth. What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, it is. I guess one of my thoughts around it is I think competition has definitely been something that small business or business has seen as a really, not a value, but that's businesses have assumed that there's competition. We've got to be competitive. It's you against me.
Yeah.
We're both competing for the same clients, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't have a history of that working for me.
Yeah.
Which might mean I could have a more successful business if I didn't think the way that I do, but it's working for me. For me, I actually think we are going to now get further if there is more collaboration, and I know that word gets used an awful lot. But the reality for me is I have gotten better at being able to work with people who complement my skill set. So I don't want to compete with somebody who does exactly the same thing as me. There's plenty of work. I believe my abundance mentality suggests that there's more work than we can manage as individuals. So for me, I enjoy working as part of a team, whether that's virtual or otherwise. And I genuinely think that there's more work out there than we can all manage individually. I am not an attention to details person. I am not good in the accounting space. I am really good in helping teams work well together, and I'm really good in helping teams find money for what they want to do. So for me, it's actually about being really clear on my values and where my business can do something, and maybe it's the competitive advantage kind of thing, but I think where people would benefit working with me is if they want to take an idea and make it happen. It won't. I am in the pursuit of excellence, not the pursuit of perfection. If you want a really detailed, well thought out, we'll spend 12 months thinking about it, and then we'll act. I am not your person.
Yeah.
If you want to spend 10 minutes thinking about it, and by the end of the year we've nutted it out and we've tried it and all the rest of it, I'm definitely your person.
That's right.
So I think that for me is probably where I look at, and where I actually think from a reputation point of view, it can be really useful to kind of stick to your knitting. So that whole don't be a generalist, be a specialist sort of thing. I would rather specialise in a few areas and know who else I can pull into my team to do that, so that the space that I see myself moving into is more around some of this project management and having 2 or 3 people being able to do the parts of a project that I am not the best person to do, or I just don't want to do. And I think there's plenty of people out there, and I guess part of my interest in being involved in your work, Rita, is it'll open doors to other people who I didn't know were working in a particular space, and it just builds to the network of really good small businesses we have across regional Australia, or regional Queensland particularly.
So what's your, I mean, a lot of what you just said is really it's actually some growth strategies you just talked about. So what is your kind of, I guess, idea or your thoughts about growth for your own business?
Part of it for me is not keeping what I do a secret, and assuming that people will guess what it is that this business might be able to help them with. So that's, a little part of marketing, but also being able to put it out in the universe. And so I guess, again, for me now, making decisions around, this is a great opportunity for me to be able to share some ideas with you and with others, but also it's, from a business point of view, it's not keeping what I do a secret. This is key. This conversation is key to what it is I want to be doing in the next few years. So it's an obvious alignment for me to be part of this.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that is part of, I guess, my next little evolution is really being able to look back at the last 4 years and say, well, some of these things worked really well, and some of these, holy hell, they were a screaming disaster. What do we do out of that? And how do we actually start to celebrate failure in the learnings as much as we do our successes? So, I do struggle a little bit with some of the funding that's around for innovation and for newness. We're looking for new and innovative ways to do this, but you've got to have lasted for 3 years. You've got to have really good financials. Like, that doesn't actually marry up for me. We need to actually be okay to put some dollars towards something, knowing it might not work. And I sort of don't necessarily see that just at the moment with some of the funding opportunities. But I do think we need to sort of get better at saying what we've done that's worked well, but equally what we've done that we do differently, because we don't want people to repeat. That's that duplication and that definition of insanity kind of stuff kicks in a bit for me. And I guess to kind of follow that through, one of the parts for me that I needed to learn in the last 4 years was around the actual structure of people. So I've gone from a sole trader to a company in the last few years, predominantly for tax purposes. But what I didn't do well was work out when I needed extra people and how to actually engage them. So being able to talk to your accountant about employees or contractors, being able to manage that space, I made some decisions that at the time was what I thought would work, and in hindsight was not quite right for me. So from my side of things now and the scale and size of my business, I have an employee from a finance and admin support point of view. And instead of employing anybody else, I actually contract people based on projects. So I might still have somebody work for me 3 or 4 days a week, but it's on specific projects and they've got specific tasks within that. So for people starting out, getting some ideas and clarity around what does that actually look like, because it's a massive impact to cash flow.
Absolutely.
I had some really had some really good learnings around that, but at the time it was stuff where I did need to make a decision, because that, good businesses can unravel as a result of cash flow pretty quickly if we don't really jump on some of this. And so for me, that was this employee contractor stuff. And again, it was coming back and having some really good business advisors around me to help me make some of those decisions.
Okay. So I know one thing we as women very often struggle with, especially when we're entrepreneurial and we're involved in a lot of initiatives and projects, working on our own business, etc. Like, how do you stay motivated when it gets really busy and you have a family and so forth? This balance between work-life balance and so forth. That's really a struggle for us as women usually, and I'm sure for a lot of males as well. How do you do it? Like what?
Well, really poorly for the first couple of years, Rita. So I think more and more how we define work-life balance, it is not 50-50. And so for me, what I know is that I can, if I need to, I've got a really busy month of work, I need to balance that with a few days off, a long weekend, a week where I can work from home and have a sleep after lunch or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I can't do everything forever, and at some point I need to do nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, that is being able to literally manage my diary better and have a few people around me who know that I'm meant to, there's a week that I don't do any travel. That's my week in Goondiwindi.
That's right.
And my ability to want to be involved with everything is very difficult. So me saying no to things, I can cheat myself a little bit sometimes. So I've got to have a couple of people who help me say no and make sure that I can say no. And so Nat, who works with me, she's got access to my diary, and so she needs to say to me sometimes, aren't you meant to be doing nothing? Is this not your working in Gundy week? So I think the work-life balance thing, I think, is a fallacy in terms of it being 50-50 all of the time. But I think we need to be able to know our bandwidth a little bit. So I can do a big month and then I need a few days off, or managing that a little bit, I think, is really important. The motivation piece, I think I do a lot of driving, as would you and as would lots of people that are going to be involved with this program. So that time for me I love it. I actually love when I know I've got a day or a few days of driving, because it is my time for listening to podcasts, for doing some reflection, for, just nobody can get at me. Generally, my phone doesn't work because there's no service. So, it's actually, I really love that time to be able to just think of new ideas or projects or whatever it might be. So for me, that travel time, I really cherish that. And I guess the other part is, surrounding yourself with people who are going to motivate you for different reasons. So if I am feeling a bit low or slow, I will go and have a coffee with somebody, or I'll ring them, and it's enough for me to get a pep talk to keep going. And they're women who I admire, who are in similar situations, have got similar roles, and they know that I would do the same for them if they need it. So that network of people is really critical for motivation, particularly for me and my personality.
What's your thoughts on mentorship and, how that could help women?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think mentoring is kind of one of those terms that has evolved, and so people maybe think that it's more complicated than it needs to be. I would have mentors who would have no idea that I see them as a mentor.
That's right.
No idea. It's a really informal situation, but there will be some really specific questions that at times I will ask them over a cup of coffee or in an email. So I think, mentoring is, it's happened for a lot of us all of our life. We just maybe haven't called it that. It's the respecting the seniors of the community who knew how what happened on properties and what the weather was doing. you know, we've kind of had that. We just maybe have never called it mentoring before.
That's right. Yeah.
So for me, it's about, you know, I've been involved with situations where I've had a formal mentor, where I've had informal mentors, where people have seen me as a mentor or whatever. But I guess my definition of it is being able to have somebody that I can talk with about a specific topic or situation where I'm not the expert. So it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody older. For a lot of us, we're probably being taught around social media and technology by people more than half, you know, less than half our age. You know, 15 and 16-year-olds are mentoring what technology at the moment. We just might not call it that. But I do think that in terms of our personal and professional growth, having somebody that we can have engage and have a conversation with around a particular growth area for us is really important. Call it a mentor, call it a coach, whatever you want to call it. I think it's for us to be able to progress what it is that we're doing.
Yeah. I'm in total agreement with you there. You know, I've seen the value and the power of mentoring, and that's certainly something that the WIRE program feels very strongly about as well. And as the program will unfold, the idea is really to link in a whole range of mentors into various aspects of the program. Can you, this may be a little bit of a tough one, you know, what do you think is your biggest overall lesson you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey, you know, and that you want to pass on to other women?
So I think for me, it comes back to this confidence piece and us backing ourselves. So if I don't think I can do it, then why would I assume anybody else would? You know, it's that kind of got to love yourself before you can love somebody else kind of mantra. So I guess that's been my biggest learning is I can't expect, you know, I can't expect other people to take my business seriously if I don't. You know, if I say, oh, well, I just kind of help people around the edge and, you know, I do a bit of this and a bit of that. Yeah. I really can't expect too many people wanting to engage if that's the way I describe my business. So it is that ability for us to back ourselves and practice that and use our mentors and our networks and our friendship groups to be able to help build our confidence. But I think that's probably been my biggest lesson is, you know, I need to talk about myself and my business the way I would talk about my best friend. And generally, we talk about other people a lot nicer. We'll talk up their great attributes a lot easier than we will our own. And I think that's, you know, that's part of that, not wanting to be seen bigger than our boots and the tall poppy side of things. But I think if we actually all want to be able to live out our purpose and live out some of these great things that we want to be able to do, I can't expect, you know, a viable and vibrant community if I'm not doing my bit for that. And so I think that helps me that helps me to be a bit more confident to talk about that and back myself a little bit more. So that would be my biggest hope for others, is that they can really see the great things that they're being part of and really own their contribution to that.
Would there be maybe other things as well? Like if I ask you maybe just to maybe give me 2 or 3 more specific things that if I say to you, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurial women?
What other advice would I give? I'd say get involved with networks. So be part of professional networks straight away. So what links to their particular thing? If it's Queensland Rural Women's Network, obviously, if it's the local Chamber of Commerce, if it's the Australian network of whatever, be part of networks. And I guess the other piece for me would be not to see your business as it is today, but what you want it to be in 5 or 10 years. So you might not have, and being really clear around how you're going to define success in your business. So if you want to have a staff of 10 or a turnover of $2 million or whatever it is, we'll start behaving like that today. and building systems and processes in. So I guess one of the things one of my mentors talked to me about was, have I actually created a business, or am I just giving myself a job? So can I go on a month's holiday, and would my business keep going? And the answer is it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Things would stop if I was physically not here. That's gotten a little bit better in recent times.
Yeah.
But, the question around, is your business saleable? Yeah. What is your business, and who is your business? And so I'm not going to die in a ditch over the fact that for the last few years I have been my business, and for the next few years it will be as well. The reality is I have kept myself in a job, and I'm actually really proud of that.
Yeah.
Because I have, I've kept a good salary, I can pay off home loans and all the rest of it. So I don't see that as a failure. But if I'm serious about establishing a business, then now I'm at the stage where I need to build in some systems and some processes, so it's not just about me.
Yeah.
So that would be the other piece of advice, is how do you make it not just about you as an individual in the business, and at what stage do you need to build in systems and people around you to be able to support some of that? So that question around, have you actually created a business, or are you just keeping yourself in a job, was a really good question for me. And that kind of, I keep that front and center when I'm doing different activities. And do I need to be the person that does this, or could I be the person that brings in the project or brings in the particular contract and then engages somebody else to actually do the work?
Yeah.
And where do I fit in this? So that would be the other thing is, I still don't really have a desire to have a team of 10 or, offices in different parts of the state. That's personally not my definition of success, but I would like to go on a bloody holiday and know that things will keep happening. And so that's my goal at the moment for the next 12 months or so, is to be able to get some stuff in place where that can actually happen.
Just probably about 3 more questions for you. The first one is, what would be your definition of success?
Yeah. So my definition of success is that I can, at the end of a day or the end of a week, genuinely feel that I have contributed to something bigger than myself. And for me, that is around a contribution to community that will see this viability and vibrancy word that I talk a lot about. So for me, that's a definition, that my work is something that's bigger than me and is actually making change in community. That's a really important success for me. Another part of the success of my business is that I can be in a position where Tony and I have the ability to not stress about money. So I grew up in a family where money equaled a whole lot of stress. Didn't seem to matter the amount, but money created stress. And really, whether it's around money or security, I would like to know that there's a lot of things to stress about. I don't want money to be one of them. So that either means that I need to earn a certain amount, or we need to live a different lifestyle. But for me, success is I don't actually lose sleep over money. And the other thing for me is that I get to live a life where I can actually do some of the things I want to. So we've been able to buy a little block. We've got some cattle and some sheep, and I've got a couple of guinea pigs. And so for me, it's actually being able to enjoy that space as well and actually live, not drive myself into the ground. So, so for me, that's some of the ways that I define success.
Okay, that's wonderful. What is one amazing thing you would want to kind of create in the future to make a difference? Because from just listening to you, you're all about making a difference. And I'm just wondering if you do have one particular thing that you think about maybe for the future in that particular context.
Yeah. So the bit for me, I think, Rita, is around people being individuals, being proud of who they are and where they're from, and wanting to contribute to that improvement. So I've lived, and I guess I've lived in communities where I've really enjoyed living in the particular town or in a particular region, and all of it in southwest Queensland. But you talk to people and they've lived there all their life and they hate it. And I think, why would you do that to yourself?
That's right.
If you don't like it, move. You're not a tree. You know, we've all seen that quote. You don't like where you are, up and go. And so I want to be part of a community where people say, I'm from Goondiwindi and I really love it, and this is what I do to make this a great place. And I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of how I live my life. You know, I'm from Roma, I'm from Mitchell, I'm from Mount Isa, wherever I'm from, this is who I am and this is why I'm proud to be here. Not, you know, well, I'm Julia from Goondiwindi and I tried living in Brisbane, but the traffic got to me and, you know, I parking fine, so I thought I better live somewhere else. That's for me not what I see. I really genuinely believe that our regional areas have got the answers to lots of the challenges that we have got as a country, and I think genuinely we don't actually realise it because we take for granted some of our values and we take for granted some of the stuff that just seems normal to us. And I really am excited about being part of a part of the world that I think will really be able to help make a difference, help change how people see things and what happens. Whether it's, I think we talk a lot at the moment about, population movement and demographics and young people leaving the country, and we're losing all of these people, and yet we've got great skill sets in some of our refugees and migrants that would love to live in Goondiwindi or love to live in Charleville or love to live in Rockhampton or wherever. How do we actually make that possible? I think it's a really exciting time to live regionally, and I think we should be really proud of that, because I think really, other than some slow bandwidth from time to time, there's nothing that we can't do in a regional centre that could be done in a capital city or a bigger centre. And I think, we need to stop, for some of us, we need to stop using that as an excuse and actually see that as a benefit. I can do a lot more in Goondiwindi for the broader community than I could if I lived in inner city Brisbane or Sydney or wherever, because I can access decision makers, I can ring the mayor, I can talk to a federal or state member really easily, because there's not that many of us. We can get decision makers and influencers really quickly, and I see that as a great benefit, not as a challenge in some of our regional areas. Yeah.
My last question, can we find you online, and where do we find you if yes?
Yes, definitely can. If you want to see photos of my guinea pigs, no. So Engage and Create Consulting has got a Facebook page, and I guess there we share what we're doing and grant opportunities and fun stuff and good stuff that we're seeing in regional areas. We are on Instagram, and I think it's as Engage and Create. I'm on Twitter. I'm really happy to share my email address if people want to get in contact. So, I guess probably Facebook is the space that I end up spending more time on, if people want to connect sooner rather than later.
Engage and Create.
I'd be really happy, Rita, if you want to share contact details or whatever, that's no worries at all. Okay.
JuliaTelford, thank you very, very much for your time, for your inspiration. I feel really inspired on this side and really looking forward to doing some more work with you in the future, especially in relation to this particular program. Thank you very, very much.
Rita, thank you. I mean, we're really lucky that we've got people like you in the positions that you are, who not only also agree that this is work that would be really great, but are prepared to develop the programs and find the collaborators and do the work. So on behalf of all of the women that are going to benefit from the work that you do, thanks very much.